discuss some of the more deeper significance of Rosh Hashanah, while most of the ideas and concepts that are to be included in the purposes of Rosh Hashanah are already on tape. I wanted to add another dimension which is not included within the tapes. The whole idea of Rosh Hashanah is mentioned in Parshat Pinchas, in chapter 29, and verse 1, where it says, "And in the 7th month, the first day of the month, is a holy convocation. All work is not permitted. Yom Teruah Yeh Lachem. Yom Teruah Yeh Lachem. It should be a day of Teruah. Teruah. Now, we know that one of the sounds that we have on Rosh Hashanah is Teruah. The other sounds, like Tikiyah, like Shvarim, are not specifically mentioned in the Torah. Not specifically mentioned in the Torah. And the question is, where did this whole idea that Shvarim, which means, for those of you who should be familiar, and we'll know shortly why, Shvarim is those three long sounds. Three long sounds. Teruah are the 9 short sounds. And Tikiyah is that one long sound. In other words, they all last the same, or at least the minimum of the same amount of time. But one is a straight, uninterrupted blowing sound. One is of 3 longer sounds, and the Teruah, which is Shvarim, which also means from the word Shever, broken, and Teruah, which is the 9 intermittent sounds, also lasting as long as the Tikiyah and the Shvarim. And that's all that's mentioned. This is this one verse, and from here emerged many of the concepts that we associate with Rosh Hashanah. Yet, for some inexplicable reason, why should only one verse be given for this important holiday, whereas when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, which is almost an insignificant holiday, much is said about it. When we come to Pesach or the other days, Shavuot, much is said about it. We have a story. The Torah was given on that day, etc. Here, when it comes to the day of Rosh Hashanah, it's very brief. And what is the reason for it? To make the connection to this particular session tonight, we know that whatever we're going to listen to, whatever we'll hear, we can understand it at one level of consciousness, and then we can understand things at an upper level of consciousness, meaning things that register that with our 5% of the capacity of our mind, we would not recognize the internal meaning. And therefore, we read the Zohar to make this connection, which assists us in achieving an upper level of consciousness, meaning a more deeper, significant understanding of the same subject matter. I read from the Zohar in Parshat Vayikra, which elaborates on this whole idea of the blowing of the shofar. And it says, Rabbi Lazar v'Rababa hayu yoshvim, they were sitting, Amar Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. Ra'iti Avi b'yom Rosh Hashanah v'yom HaKippurim, I saw my father, Rabbi Shimon, and in the day of Rosh Hashanah and the day of Yom Kippur, when these days were approaching, Shlo ratza lishmoa hatfilah mikol adam. He did not want to listen to the tefillah, to the prayers of any person. Ele imkein amad Allah shlosha yamim bikodem. Only when he stood with him 3 days prior to the event, in other words, 3 days prior to Rosh Hashanah, or 3 days prior to Yom Kippur, l'taher oto, to purify him. To purify him. What does that mean? He purified him. He took him to with purification may mean he took him to the mikveh to purify him. What does it mean to purify him? But in any event, he took this individual who was going to be the Hazan and instructed him and also cleansed him 3 days prior to Rosh Hashanah and 3 days prior to Yom Kippurim. Rabbi Shimon aya omer kach. And this is the way Rabbi Shimon would say it. B'tfilah shel adam hazeh shani mitaro mitkaper ha'olam. That this individual that I took under my wing, that I am purifying him, mitkaper ha'olam. The entire world receives a kapara, meaning a forgiveness. Kol sheken, and surely b'tiyat shofar, and surely when it comes to the matter of blowing the shofar, shelo haya mikabel tkiyat adam, he never would accept the blowing of people. She'ena chacham, who is not a wise man, litkoa b'kavana b'sod hatkiyah, that if he was not wise in blowing with the proper meditation, he would never accept this individual for the purpose of blowing the shofar. In other words, not let alone that the prayers and meditation that also take place on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur were to be raised to a certain elevation, this individual. But when it came to the blowing of the shofar, that there was no question that it required more than just being purified, as Rabbi Shimon says. Now, along with this, I want to read one more Zohar. Akei Matsati, this is Kuf Gimel, page 103 in the Zohar, Pashat Vayikra, volume 11. Akei Masati b'sifro shel Rav Amnuna Saba. I found, says Rabbi Shimon, I found in the books of Rav Amnuna Saba, Rav Amnuna the elder, be'ela hatfilot shel Rosh Hashanah. The matters concerning the prayers on Rosh Hashanah, Shahaya Omer, Rav Amnuna Saba would say, hatfilah v'kol hashofar, the prayers and the voice of the shofar, shemotzi hatzadik b'shofar ahu, that the tzaddik, the righteous person, draws forth from the shofar, hayotze mirucho v'nafsho, and it goes out, not merely a sound, but originates from the soul of the person, mirucho v'nafsho. In other words, there's nefesh, there is the lower level of consciousness, and in addition, rucho, which is an upper level of consciousness. Kol lahu oleh lemala, the voice ascends above. Ubiyom hahu omdim, and that day stand v'nimseim mekatrigim lemala, and there are those, Satan specifically, that are awaiting all of us on Rosh Hashanah to be mekatreg, to act as a prosecuting attorney. Uksholeh kol lahu shel hashofar. However, when the voice of the shofar rises, kulam nidachim mipanav, all are set aside, are pushed aside from this voice, the voice of the shofar, ve'inam yicholim litkayem, and they cannot exist. Ashrei chelkam shel hatzadikim, praiseworthy is the portion of the tzadikim, shiodim lechaven et haratzon lefnei adonam, that they know how to be mechaven, how to meditate, but the word is more even more specific when it says lechaven, coming from the Hebrew word kivun, In other words, which direction to take. Which direction to take. L'fnei Adonam. Why does it say l'kivun? Because it is, as I've explained in the tapes, the shofar, or the voice that comes out of the shofar, acts as a missile. Nothing less and nothing more. It acts as a very specific missile. And we know, sometimes we even hear the way scientists speak. Well, is the missile on target? Is the missile going to reach its destination? In other words, the mere fact of firing a missile, but if it's not on target, then it was a wasted missile. In other words, it must be on target. That's where, even though we have translated the word lechaven to mean kavanot, meditation, which it also includes, but the mere fact that we meditate, the mere fact that we even understand what the blowing is all about, if it's not on target, says Rabbi Shimon, the kavin et haratzon. In other words, it must be directed to a very specific course of action. Then, and only then, does the target be nitche, disappear. V'yodim l'taken et ha'olam bayom hahu b'kol hashofar. And then, by their knowing this, knowing how to correct the world, which we shall also explain what do you mean correct, l'taken, or amend the world. Al ken katuv ashrei ha'am, praiseworthy is the nation, Yodei Teruah. It says Yodei Teruah. It does not say to hear the Teruah. It says Yodei, to know the Teruah. Velo Tokei. It doesn't say praiseworthy is the nation of Israel that knows on Rosh Hashanah to blow. It doesn't say that. It says praiseworthy is the nation that knows. In other words, as we have said on many occasions, knowing is the connection. Without knowing, there is no connection. Because knowing is connection from Adam Yada et Chava in Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. Adam knew Eve and she became pregnant. Obviously, says the Zohar, just from knowing Eve, she couldn't become pregnant. But to understand, or to give us an indication, the reason the Torah used the word Adam knew Eve, to tell, and we know that it means connection, means actual sexual intercourse, to tell us that the word Yodea, to know, is connection. Without knowing, there is no connection. And in this day, the nation has to see a person that is shalem. He is complete. Hayodei drachav shel melech hakadosh v'yodei yikaro shel hamelech sheyitpalel aleim et atfilah b'yom hazeh. Because only one who is complete, in other words, it's like using an instrument, the instrument which shoots off the missile. And if that's dilapidated or that's not in good working order, the fact that you can have the most perfect missile, and it can come out as beautiful as one can expect, there is no question in any of our minds that if the mechanism, if the system is not correct, no matter how perfect that missile is, it will never reach its target. Therefore, says Rabbi Shimon, it is essential that the person be the proper instrument. He be complete. Sheyazmin kol shofar b'kol olamot b'kavanat halev. Because he must arrange and prepare and invite this voice of the shofar in all of the worlds. b'kavanat alev, b'chachma, says Rabbi Shimon, it's got to be with wisdom, b'ratzon, with a desire, and b'shleimut. Kidei she'istalek adin ayado min olam. In order that din, meaning judgment, meaning if, for whatever reason, in our activities, we have done some of the things which may have been negative. They are called din. And on this day, all of these different activities, negative activities, come back now to haunt us. And we must remove that din. Ol le'elu, says Rabbi Shimon, woe unto those asher hashliach shalahem lo nimtza karui. Woe unto those who the shliach, the messenger, or the representative, or the system, is not in proper working order. Ki avonot ha'olam yavo laskir b'shvilo. Because then, all of the sins of the world, meaning what? Meaning all of the negativity that people have inserted within the whole of the cosmos, will constantly come back to haunt us. Constantly come back to haunt us. All right? So what do we see from Rabbi Shimon? The necessity of knowing what's going on and what's flying, and also that the individual who is going to maneuver the system, who is in charge of the system, is in proper working order because he is the system. He is the system. The missile is the voice. The person is the system. Therefore, I can't stress often enough the aspect of no matter where we are, that Rosh Hashanah, unfortunately, it seems that even in the days of Rabbi Shimon, took on another tune. Rosh Hashanah took on another significance. Because why did Rabbi Shimon have to stress that he would need this individual to sit with him 3 days and tell us all about the importance of the individual, so forth and so on? What was happening? And I believe what was happening then is what's happening today. That for the most part, outside of those involved in Kabbalah, even those who are involved with the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, look upon it as a day. Those who still feel the importance and significance of Rosh Hashanah, that it is a holiday that, number one, brings everyone together. It's a holiday. It's a holiday. Like Pesach is a holiday. But there you have the idea of the Seder, so it means bringing together members of the family. When we talk about Rosh Hashanah, there's no mention anywhere about a Su'udat in the Torah itself. It says that every family should gather together a lamb, eat the lamb together. We see the significance of a family relationship. It doesn't mean the fact that families sit down together will hold them together. That is not the guarantee. The fact that you sit down together, you are therefore create a unified family. The fact that we sit together. Of course, if you don't sit together, there's no chance of having a unified family. I mean, if everyone is going his different ways. But we must also understand that the fact that we sit together, the mere physical presence of one another does not guarantee that the family stays together. Why not? On Pesach, it does. There is a Seder. That's why it's called Seder. There's a prescribed method by which, through this repetition of the prayers and all of the other activities that go on in the night of Pesach, these will guarantee the existence of a family being together. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, no mention in the Torah of being together. In fact, according to Rabbi Shimon, and according to the Torah, remember I said there's only one verse, Teruah, meaning what? The word Teruah means broken. The word Teruah means broken. The word Teruah also means wailing. Another indication, when is there wailing? Chas v'shalom, at a funeral, people cry. On a sad occasion, people cry. Why? Because there's a break in the family. There's wailing. Not merely death, but whatever the occasion might be. That is what Rosh Hashanah is about. It is a day that contains one concept, and only one concept alone. Teruah. Things are broken this day. The world is sitting in judgment this day. Why? Because if, as Rabbi Shimon says, has been a tremendous infusion of negative activity, the fact that families will sit together on this day, just sit together and enjoy each other. The sitting together on Rosh Hashanah does not affect in any way, like Pesach, does not affect in any way the changing of this broken day. It's a broken day. So while I might try to go against the cosmos and say, well, we'll sit together, there isn't sufficient weaponry, shall I say, or sufficient consciousness, sufficient energy by which the sitting together is going to make any change. Therefore, always before Rosh Hashanah or before any holiday, there's always the idea that some people understand the significance in a family and some people don't. And the idea comes up, but if I'm not here with the family, then if they're not into it, then they'll all disperse in their different ways, whereas I can keep this family together. And I must tell you that the Torah, in its coded message, has already described for us, and in fact forecasted the future, when he says, the fact that this day, which is a day of fragmentation, a day of devastation, a day of destroying, the fact is, if we do not remove this negative activity called din, then it will come back to haunt us throughout the year. That's the point that Rabbi Shimon is making. The fact that we can sit together and make a physical attempt at being unified is not sufficient. This kind of negative activity that comes on Rosh Hashanah must be removed. It must be removed. And it cannot be removed except by way of the prayer, in other words, not by way of the Suda or sitting together, and even more so by way of the shofar. By way of the shofar. In the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, there is an interesting section on page 28, where they're discussing the idea of kavanot, in other words, of the meditation. And the question arises, do we need that people should concentrate? When I say concentrate, it's really not the proper definition or translation. But does one need kavanot, mitzvahs tzrichot kavanot, or not? There's a quarrel between the sages. In other words, when I hear when I hear the blowing of the shofar, do I have to meditate and concentrate on what that blowing is about? Or it's just to hear it? Just to hear it. Just to hear it. In this case, all of the sages come to the conclusion, including Rava, who is the individual that is drawing all of this dialogue together. Mitzvot, sichot, kavanah. You must have kavanah. Ve'im lav, and I will read it. Im kivon libo yatsa, ve'im lav lo yatsa. He does not fulfill the precept, which is the way we normally translate this passage, but what it really means, he has not accomplished. He has not accomplished the purpose. Not accomplished the purpose. Then the Gemara goes on because it's an interesting concept. What happens if he didn't want to read it? If he didn't want to hear? He didn't want to hear. But he's walking by a Bet HaKnesset and they're blowing. But the mere fact that he's walking by outside is indicative that he's really not concerned about coming in. So the Gemara brings down what happens if someone is forced to eat matzah on Pesach. Someone is forced to eat matzah on Pesach. Whether he has accomplished the purpose of eating the matzah. And the Gemara asks, most interesting Gemara, the Gemara asks, who would force someone to eat matzah on Pesach? Why would you force anyone to eat matzah on Pesach? What does the Gemara answer? Parsim, Persians.
That's what the Gemara answers?
Yes, that's what the Gemara answers. Persians. Only the Persians will force someone to eat matzah.
It's correct. When they offer you something, they're kind of obliging you to take it.
They obliging you.
Yes.
But how?
What?
How do they force somebody with a gun?
No, it didn't say that. It didn't say that. It says you're forcing. It didn't say, by the way, with force. It didn't say bakor. It says the Persians.
Just in case the visitor is too shy to take it.
What's that?
In case you're too shy to take it, so I'm offering it to you and encouraging you
Well,
to take it.
that's not called forcing. The Gemara wants to...
It says, this is what you
No, it says forcing. It says forcing. No, he's forcing you to eat it, and it doesn't mean he's forcing you. And the Gemara says, who can force someone? It says Persians. So when I saw that, I asked myself, what do you mean Persians? What about no other Jews around that like to influence, like to impress others, and so on? Why did the Gemara? Why the Gemara? This is not the Zohar that speaks much about the Persians, but why the Gemara? No, what was so significant about Persians? Now I must tell you,
Parsi is the same numerologically as Shem.
Shem
is also maybe the Tuah.
Well, Paras also, we said once before, Paras is Pshat Remez and Sod, right? In other words, when it says Parasu Madai in the Megillah, Parasu Madai, generally when one reads the Megillah, he thinks it means from the nation of Paras to the nation of Madai. But we know that the Zohar says there's a deeper significance in Paras Umadai. Madai is a code name. The whole Megillah was a code name of Moshe, David, and Yosef. Moshe, David, and Yosef. What does Madai mean? 3 columns. Moshe, David, and Yosef. These 3, that's why we make Kiddush on Shabbat at the Sudat Shlishit. Why? And we concentrate on drawing down the energy of Moshe, David, and Yosef, which is Madai. Mem is for Moshe, Dalet is for David, and Yud is for Yosef. In other words, the city which was called Madai in Persia happened to be called Madai? We know, of course not. And Paras was called Paras. Why was that name given? Just like we know that in Spain, the name Sfarad wasn't just given by chance. The name already was originated on a higher level. It then became manifest. When the Gemara says Paras, that the Persians would force, what did it mean? How do you force things? How do you force things? Even if you go with a gun. You know what happened in China? But in June, thousands of people were demonstrating, and they came in and mowed them over with tanks, and therefore what happened? All was over with. We know that force, physical contact, the idea of sitting together at Rosh Hashanah, that's why the Gemara is relating it to Tkiyat Shofar. The physical fact that we sit with our families, there's a physical unification. Gemara says no. You remember Paras? What was their power? Moshe, David, and Yosef. It is only when you bring together three forces, right, left, and central, can you effect changes. Nothing on a physical level. Even when they mowed out all these thousands of Chinese, is that everyone now is agreeable? Everyone has ceased to feel that he wants to rebel? No. Because that is no way that we can ever control. What is control? Madai. Remember in the Megillah of Purim? Madai. You know what the Persians used? Madai. They knew how to control people. And when we talk about controlling people, we are talking about controlling economies, because we talk that way here too. We want to control the world. Quantum now tells us that we can control. But there is never control on the physical level. That's what the Gemara meant. Persians. What was the special quality? Because it was they were the first ones who brought to us the power of what happened on Purim. Why did it happen on Purim? Because they executed the power of the three columns. Madai. That's the secret. When it says Madai, it wants to tell me a city. I have to know if Nebuchadnezzar controlled from this city to that city. I mean, he controlled. Why? What was so significant in mentioning Madai? The same way as the Gemara mentions Persians. What's the significance of Persians? Well, you mean they were stronger people? They could take, in fact, Persians, on the contrary. Physically, they're not demonstrative. They're not demonstrative. Only recently, but by and large, we know that even in the story of Purim, they were not demonstrative. They did nothing. And they defeated the enemy. From there, we have to learn. Therefore, from here, we learn in this Gemara that mitzvah tzichat kavanah. In other words, why does it need kavanah? Why does it need meditation? Why does it need direction on a metaphysical level? That you learn from the Persian. Because the only way that you can affect changes in the cosmos, meaning, and that affects me, if I want to bring a family together, no meal will ever do it. On Pesach, says the Gemara, what happens if you force someone to eat matzah, it says? If you force someone to eat matzah, yes. Why? Because on Pesach, there is this physical demonstration, although it requires other things. But they made a seder to indicate to us that Pesach was more related to what? The physicality of things. On this level. When you come to Rosh Hashanah, nothing exists on this level. Nothing. How do we know nothing exists on this level? The Gemara brings a another aspect of Rosh Hashanah, when it says, Rosh Hashanah, we do not bless this Shabbat, we will not bless the new moon. The only month that is not blessed by the Shabbat in advance is the month of Tishrei, the month of Libra, the month of Rosh Hashanah. There are many aspects given. Why we don't. Some say, in the absence of a better explanation, I must say we have a better explanation. In the absence of a better explanation, they say that because Rosh Hashanah is such a holiday that has this kind of judgment theme, and we don't want to remind God, and we don't want to remind the Satan that the day of judgment is coming, and therefore we don't even mention it on this coming Shabbat. This is what you probably can hear for those of you who go to some Bet HaKnesset, and someone will ask, if someone still asks. So most people won't even notice that this coming Shabbat, you don't even do Birkat HaChodesh, thinking maybe the rabbi forgot, so we can get through quicker. Nobody's going to remind them, right? Not here, that's right. Not here. No. Here we make it a point to know
no matter what.
we're going to get finished later without the
Find something else to do.
right. Here it says we do not do Mevochem HaChodesh, and it's a Gemara, or actually it's a Rashi. Shahalavana eina nira'it. The moon does not appear. The moon does not appear. You would say maybe Rashi wasn't that familiar. I mean, because if we're going to look out with a telescope, we are going to see the moon. We're going to see the moon. Comes up every month. Like every other month, including the month of Tishrei. What does Rashi mean? Did Rashi mean that he doesn't see it? No. This month of Tishrei, you do not see the moon. But we do see the moon. There's a physical expression. It ties in, says Rashi, and he brings the verse in Psalms, which we recite on Rosh Hashanah, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, ba'keseh liyom chagenu. This day is concealed. This day is concealed. What does it mean it's concealed? Rashi learns the moon is not there. The moon is not there. But the moon is there. The relationship with what we have just discussed about forcing things as opposed to Pesach and so on this day, physical manifestation, just like we've tried to explain away the fact that when families get together on Rosh Hashanah and they are not dealing with the thing that can bring families together, they will remain apart, says Rabbi Shimon. This day of separation, of fragmentation, will always come back. Lahaskir lanu. It'll always make its presence felt. And therefore, on Rosh Hashanah, as opposed to all other holidays, or whenever we have, let's say, a high-energy experiential here, some people say, well, my wife's birthday, my cousin's this, or I say, okay. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, and I had another call today, and someone says, the family this is it. We will never be together again. If I leave, and come to the center's Rosh Hashanah, we'll never be together. Never. It'll be eternally broken. The father will never get together with the son. The father-in-law won't get together with the son. And these are things that we have been hearing for years. For years. Says Rabbi Shimon, if there's any day that you want to preserve a family, it has to begin on Rosh Hashanah. It has to begin on Rosh Hashanah. Because the cosmos itself dictate fragmentation. The cosmos dictate separation. When Rashi says that we can't see, Rashi, as well as the Psalm and David, wants to indicate to us, but we see. We see the moon. Just like when you have your family together. Now we're together. It's an illusion. Not on this day. On this day, it's an illusion. Even though the family's sitting together and you see the moon. No. It is not there. But you can say, but I see. So it's like I told someone about the expression, and it's true. If any of you have ever seen a chicken without a head. If you've ever seen a chicken without a head. Literally. You know how long the chicken can go on? Walking and running all around? That's where the expression came from. Chicken without a head. Meaning what? This chicken, for all intents and purposes, as we observe it, is alive. It walks here, turns around. It does not, without the head, it continues. Meaning the power of illusion. The power of illusion is so strong. On which day? On Rosh Hashanah. Why is it so powerful? Because this is the day that din has to reign. Fragmentation, negative energy, negative activity, all of the negativity assembled throughout the year comes together when? On this day. There is no negative day. Even when we talk about Tisha B'Av, the day the Satan reigns, we said that was his day. But we also said that day has an inbuilt security system. What is it called? Chag. Tisha B'Av is also called Moed. It's called a holiday. Why? Because within the system of the Satan, he already has his counterpart, the Moed, the Mashiach, which is born that day. There is an inbuilt protection or security shield that we make use of. All you have to do is connect with it. It's there. On Rosh Hashanah, there is no support system. In the cosmos, there is no support system. None. There is nothing that we can rely on. In fact, that is the expression that you may have heard, that God sits not on the chair of mercy, but al kisei hadin, not al kisei harachamim, on the chair of mercy. He sits on the chair of din. What do you mean he sits on the chair of din? On the chair of fragmentation, the chair of negativity? Because on this day, even God himself cannot be relied upon to act on our behalf. Whereas Tisha B'Av, which is an extreme negative day, it's also a holiday. There is a support system built in within Tisha B'Av, that if we can make that connection, that's all we need. Instead of connecting to Satan, like we refrain from eating, drinking, and etc., we have pushed him aside and have connected with the positive aspect of Tisha B'Av, because there is a positive aspect in Tisha B'Av. On Rosh Hashanah, there is no positivity. Period. The reason it says there's no Levana, what's so significant that there's no Levana? There's no new moon. Because we said on every month, while we're going to do the Yana B'Koach, but it's going to have very little significance with the Yud and the Resh. Let's say on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because in every month, while there is a negative aspect to a month, like Cancer, we said, what does Cancer mean? The month of Cancer? That month is when cancer begins. Chas v'shalom. Someone is vulnerable. That's the month it begins. The fact that it appears 20 years later, 30 years later, has no significance. When will it begin? In the month of Cancer. So we say, we have the Ana B'Koach, we know the letters that created Cancer, therefore we can take control and draw down the positive aspects of Cancer, because every month has its internal consciousness and external consciousness, has a body consciousness and what we call a soul consciousness. The soul, just like an individual, so has the moon its system. Its system consists of two parts. It has a part of a consciousness which we can draw through her, through the moon, the positive qualities of Cancer, and at the same time, we can also create a security shield and avert the negative consequences. If we don't have the system, then we're subject and we're exposed and we're vulnerable to Cancer. If we know how to protect ourselves, we are not vulnerable. Why? Because we choose the positive aspect, because, right, as we said with the poison ivy tree, right next to the poison ivy tree, there is that sapping, which is the healing for poison ivy, right next to it. In other words, when it says that God always sends the refuah before the makkah, what does it mean he sends it before? In other words, there is no negative element in this world that does not and is not accompanied by a positive element. Everything, including the month. The moon is a channel for both positivity and a channel for negativity. But says, like Rashi and King David, this month, forget it. This month, or the first day of the month, is just din, nothing more. It is just a composite of pure negative energy, nothing more. The reason we do not do the Birkat HaChodesh, because why do we do Birkat HaChodesh? For those, just to review it briefly, for those who are not here on Shabbat, therefore, maybe they've never heard it, but the reason we do Birkat HaChodesh on Shabbat is because on Shabbat we automatically are thrust into a higher level of consciousness. It's Shabbat. We can make connections with the moon, direct connections, and we make the connections. How the prayer reads. It should be a month of blessing, of this, that, all of the blessings that are contained in this universe. When we do the Birkat HaChodesh, we are connecting with the positive aspect of that particular Chodesh. But on Rosh Hashanah, the fact that the naked eye will see the month, but no, it is concealed. What's concealed? But we see the month. We see the moon. We see it with our naked eye even. Why don't we do the Birkat HaChodesh? Because the purpose of the Birkat HaChodesh is to connect to the positive element, since the moon is a channel for both positive and negative activity of that particular zodiac sign. No, on Libra, there is only one aspect. The aspect of positivity is concealed. And therefore, I didn't originate this, but when it says that Libras see both sides so clearly, but what happens? They're poor on decision making. Not because they can't make a decision, not because they're weak, but they see both sides so clearly. So if you see both sides so clearly, why don't you make a decision? I mean, there are people who make decisions every day and then say, oh, I made a mistake. I didn't see that other aspect of it. They see it so clear. Now weigh it and make a decision. Where did it originate that they are hard on decisions? Because there is, in this particular month, whilst things are so clear as they are to now, they're clear to us. They're clear. But there is an aspect that exists in this month that is more difficult than in any other month. In this month, The moon, which acts normally to channel positive energy of a particular sign of the zodiac, not this month. Not this month. In this month, it is concealed. Therefore, when you want to make a decision, why doesn't a Libra make a decision? Because they see clear positive and see clear negative. Now they need that little edge. What's the edge? A little more positive communication will weigh the scale over to a little more positivity. And therefore the result will absolutely be positive. But that is lacking. And therefore, why is a Libra afraid? Because of what Rashi says, because of what King David said. The aspect of positivity is not only that it's limited, it's not there. While we can see both, but the fact that we'll make a decision on Rosh Hashanah, and in this month making a decision, but there was a lack of positivity to balance the scale. In other words, both sides are clearly seen, both sides are clearly understood, both sides of the scale. But now if it's like this, which is the right one, the negative or the positive? They're balanced. What do? If you have a month that you can tap into a little positivity, then it'll give you the right judgment. Therefore, they don't want to make judgment, because that balance to overweigh the positive decision isn't forthcoming, because this month there is no moon. The fact that we can physically see, this is the illusion. Therefore, Rabbi Shimon, when he had this, we said this individual came to Rabbi Shimon 3 days before. Why 3 days? Why not 6 days? Why not 1 day? I mean, every time Rabbi Shimon brought the Hazan, or he brought the one who's going to blow, he always needed 3 days. Maybe one was a little more intelligent than the other. Maybe one could grasp the concepts quicker. Maybe one can blow better. The other one needed a little more training to blow right. Why did Rabbi Shimon say he brought them 3 days before? Specifically. What's that? What's that? Anyway, the question is, why didn't he blow himself? Why didn't he blow himself? That's what I thought. I thought if Rabbi Shimon blew, if he was the channel for blowing, it would be all over.
He probably wouldn't need to blow.
It would be all over.
Even need to blow.
What's that?
He probably wouldn't even need to blow.
But there actually is another reason. There's actually another reason. What you just said, David, is the lead into the answer. Rabbi Shimon said that the one who is going to be the Hazan, or the one who is going to blow, he has to be Shalem. He has to be Shalem. Meaning, he has to, like a system for activating missiles. The system is made up of different parts. At one time, the sections were separated, and then at the assembly plant, they're all put together. But each part of the system is an integral, separate part of the system. But they act as one unified whole. But they are a fragmented system. In the system, in the shuttle, when they want to send off the shuttle, there's a whole system that moves it up, that sends it forth. That system was put together by the assembly plant or whatever. But each part of it was separate at one time. And then it was put together to do the job of sending forth this missile. We know that Rabbi Shimon never was fragmented. Not from the very beginning. He was not fragmented. He was complete from the very beginning. From the very beginning. For us to be able to send off this missile and deal with negativity, we ourselves have to be fragmented. We have to be fragmented. If we are not fragmented, meaning if we were tzaddikim right at the outset, we would not be able to, those people would not be able to blow. He has to come to a point of where there is fragmentation. And then in the 3 days, why was it 3 days? The answer is obvious to most of you. 3 days meaning it was a coded message of Rabbi Shimon. We must gather together the three aspects that make a one unified whole. Right, left, and central. That's why it was 3 days. Irrespective of whether the person was more qualified or less qualified. Would it always take 3 days? Maybe for a more qualified person it would take 1 day. That's not what Rabbi Shimon is saying here. Rabbi Shimon is saying that what he did, emetaharo. What does tahor mean? We know that's another coded word, but Judaism took it over and corrupted it. Tahor. Oh, he's pure. Oh, it's pure. Pure. We know that tahor doesn't mean, pure. Water is pure water. Pure. What does that mean? It means circuit of energy. Tamei, we know according to Rabbi Shimon, fragmentation. Like the pig. Why aren't we permitted to eat pig? Why not? Because it does not consist of a 3-column system. It has the 2-column system, meaning its hooves are separated. It's separated, but it doesn't chew its cud. It lacks what? Central column, the act of restriction. What Rabbi Shimon was doing was creating a living system, just like at the assembly plant, to get the system together that this missile will reach its target. Rabbi Shimon had to put together to create l'taharo. Remember we asked what do you mean? He purified him. What, he throw him into the mikveh all the time? That's what it meant, he purified him? No. What Rabbi Shimon did was take together all of these fragmented sections of this one individual and put it together. Therefore, that this person can then, because of the 3 elements of Madai, Moshe, David, and Yosef, the 3 elements, he could, by virtue of the 3-column system, not by sitting together and enjoying ourselves on Rosh Hashanah, participating in the meal. There's a job that has to be done on Rosh Hashanah. If the job is not done properly, says Rabbi Shimon, it's not done properly, everything else that we have done is to naught, and it will constantly return. The fragmentation, here we want to get together families, and so we're bringing them together. Now, one member is going to go and he's going to do the whole thing. If he has accomplished that, the Rebbe Shimon guarantees us that will cement the family. They're sitting together just like the moon. Moon is there. It's visible, beautiful, not there. The same way as when we sit together on Rosh Hashanah, but we're not doing what Rebbe Shimon says is required, we can sit together and enjoy ourselves. But if we have not taken care of that aspect that creates fragmentation, separation in a family, in a business, in the world, wherever, then it will constantly repeat itself throughout the year. This is the only day that we cannot depend on any support system. There is no support system. On Tisha B'Av, there's a support system. While there is the Satan in his glory, at the same time, it's Moed. It's Moed. But when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, this is not just a gathering, an opportunity to get together. We have to do a job. Then we can be guaranteed, says Rabbi Shimon, we can be guaranteed what the whole year is about. Then you are guaranteed what the whole family is about. Then you are guaranteed what your business is about. If not, says Rabbi Shimon, this fragmentation that now appears on Rosh Hashanah, because positive activity is completely concealed, there is nothing you can depend upon, there is only one action. Only one action. We must remove the Satan. We must remove that fragmentation. There is no other way. How? By Yodea Truah. We must know what's happening. We must know what's happening. That means, even if we are listening to to the shofar. We are listening to the shofar, but we don't know what's flying. The verse says, Ashrei ha'am yodei truah. King David said, only those who know. And if you don't know, and you're sitting and listening to the shofar, and it's perfect, but you do not know, you have not accomplished the purpose of Rosh Hashanah. All right, we'll have a short break and then